Maya Johnson stepped out of the doctor's office with trembling legs, as if the ground beneath her was tilting. The fluorescent lights in the hospital hallway stung her eyes, but what made her heart tighten were Dr. Peterson's words still echoing in her head. Acute leukemia, stage 3. Without timely treatment, Zoe may only have 6 months. Zoe, Maya's 7-year-old daughter, the child with a radiant smile and eyes as bright as a summer sky, was fighting a disease no child should ever have to face. Maya, a 32-year-old African-American woman, had spent the entire afternoon in the stuffy consultation room at Chicago Mercy Hospital, tightly holding Zoe's hand as the doctor explained her condition. Zoe, her curly hair braided into 2 neat plaits, had drawn a picture of a kitten on graph paper while the adult spoke. "This kitten will stay with me when I get better, right?" "Mommy?" Zoe asked in a clear, innocent voice, unaware that words like cancer and chemotherapy were pressing heavily on her mother's shoulders. Maya just nodded and smiled, though a storm was raging inside her. Back in their small apartment on the south side of Chicago, Maya laid Zoe on the bed, tucked her in carefully, and sat quietly beside her, watching her daughter sleep. The room held only a double bed, a worn-out study desk filled with books and papers, and a faded wardrobe. Street lights filtered through the window, casting a soft glow on Zoe's peaceful face. Maya gently brushed her daughter's hair, trying to hold back the tears in her eyes. She couldn't let Zoe see her cry. Never. But once Zoe was fast asleep, Maya entered the living room, sat on the old sofa, and opened her laptop. She began researching her daughter's illness. The numbers and medical terms overwhelmed her: immunotherapy, targeted drugs, survival rates. Dr. Peterson had mentioned a new treatment method, combining immunotherapy with targeted medication, that had shown miraculous results in clinical trials. He said that children like Zoe have achieved complete remission, his voice filled with hope. But then he paused, his gaze darkening. "The problem is the cost. This method is still considered experimental, so insurance doesn't cover it. The estimated total cost is around $300,000. $300,000. That number struck Maya like a dagger to the chest. She worked as an administrative assistant at Carter Enterprises, a major financial consulting firm, earning $42,000 yearly before taxes. Her savings account held only $900. Her checking account had $1 and $200, and her credit cards were nearly maxed out from previous medical bills. When Zoe had pneumonia, they'd thought it was just the flu. She had no family to turn to. Her mother had passed away. Her father had left when she was little, and her cousins were all struggling with their own lives. Most of Maya's friends were also single mothers like her. No one had extra to give. Maya closed her eyes, trying to calculate. Even if she took on 2 extra jobs, didn't sleep, and didn't spend a dime, she still couldn't raise the money in time for Zoe's treatment. Dr. Peterson had been clear. The sooner we begin treatment, the better Zoe's chances. Ideally within the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 14 days to come up with a sum she couldn't even dream of. She picked up her phone and called the bank, her voice trembling as she asked about a loan. The representative was polite but cold. "With your current credit score, we can't approve a loan of that size." Maya tried 2 more banks, but the results were the same. She posted a plea on a crowdfunding site, typing every word through tears, but by the end of the day, only $50 had been donated by an old friend. She called a charity that supported children with cancer, but their wait list stretched out for months. Every door slammed shut in her face. Maya stood up, pacing back and forth in the cramped living room, holding her head. She looked at a photo on the bookshelf, her and Zoe at the park last summer, smiling brightly over melting ice cream cones. Maya whispered, "I promised I'd always protect you," her voice cracking. But now that promise felt like nothing more than an empty phrase. Maya returned to Carter Enterprises the next day, trying to appear normal. With its glass walls and gleaming desks, the office felt like a world completely removed from her own. She typed reports and answered emails, but her mind was elsewhere with Zoe, the growing pile of medical bills and numbers she could never overcome. Her colleague, Lisa, a friendly white woman, noticed something was off. "You okay, Maya? You look exhausted," Lisa asked during lunch break. Maya gave a faint smile. "I didn't sleep well." She didn't want to share, didn't want to become the object of pity. After everyone had left the office for the day, Maya stayed behind to finish a critical report. The neon lights glowed on her computer screen, highlighting the faint lines of text. She didn't hear the footsteps until a deep voice spoke. "Working late again." Maya. She was startled when she saw Ethan Carter, her boss, standing beside her desk. Ethan, a 38-year-old white man, tall with dark brown hair and piercing blue eyes, was the embodiment of success. He had turned Carter Enterprises from a small firm into a multi-million-dollar corporation. His name was featured in business magazines and Forbes lists. To Maya, he had always been a polite but distant boss. He knew her name, but never asked anything beyond work. "Just finishing the Morrison report," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. She hoped he wouldn't notice her red eyes from crying in the restroom earlier. Ethan looked at her momentarily, his gaze seeming to search for something. "You don't look well. Is something wrong?" Maya was about to lie and say she was tired or stressed from work. But maybe it was exhaustion, or the unexpected gentleness in Ethan's eyes. She blurted out, "My daughter is sick. Cancer. I need money for treatment, but I don't know how to get it." She immediately regretted it, feeling foolish for saying that to her boss. Ethan was silent, his face unreadable. "How much?" he asked, voice low. Maya hesitated, then answered, $300,000. Ethan nodded slightly, as if she'd just quoted the lunch price. "I see. That's a lot of money." She lowered her gaze, ashamed for having hoped for anything. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "See me tomorrow," Ethan interrupted. "Not here. Somewhere private. We'll talk more." Maya looked up, heart pounding. "Talk about what's a possible solution," he said, then turned and walked away, leaving her with 1,000 questions and a fragile glimmer of hope. Maya stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, trying to adjust the simple black dress she had last worn to her cousin's wedding 3 years ago. Her hands trembled as she fastened the buttons, not from the cold, but from the fear tightening around her heart. Ethan Carter had sent the address of a luxurious restaurant in downtown Chicago with a short message, 7 p.m. The table is reserved. Maya glanced at the clock, 30 minutes left. She turned to Zoe, sitting on the sofa with a picture book about marine animals. "Sweetheart, I will meet someone to discuss getting you better." "Okay," Maya said gently. Zoe looked up, her big round eyes shining. "Will they help me get better?" "Mommy." Maya swallowed hard and forced a smile. "I hope so. Miss Lisa will be here to stay with you. Be good, all right?" When Lisa, her close colleague and friend, arrived, Maya hugged Zoe tightly before stepping out the door. The Chicago night was bitterly cold, but the chill inside Maya was even harsher. She took the bus to the restaurant, trying not to think about what would happen. Le Ciel was located on the 40th floor of a skyscraper, its glass walls overlooking the glittering skyline. Maya felt lost among the expensive suits and glamorous evening gowns. A waiter led her to a secluded corner, where Ethan was already seated, a glass of wine in hand, his gaze as sharp as ever. "You made it," Ethan said, standing up and pulling out her chair. Maya sat down, clutching her purse tightly. "Thank you for making time," she replied, her voice stiff. Ethan gestured for the waiter to leave, then looked directly at her. I've thought about your situation. $300,000 is expensive, but I can afford it. Maya felt her heart race. Really? You mean Ethan raised a hand to stop her? Before you get your hopes up, hear me out. I'm not a philanthropist, Maya. I want an exchange. She frowned, confused. Exchange? I have nothing to. One night. Ethan said, his voice low and deliberate. One night with me. It is entirely consensual and completely private. No one will know. In return, I'll wire $300,000 directly to the hospital for Zoe's treatment. Time seemed to freeze. Maya felt the blood in her veins turn cold. She stared at Ethan, searching for any hint of a joke, but his face was serious, unwavering. What are you saying? She whispered, her voice trembling with anger and humiliation. What do you think I am? Ethan leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. I don't think anything. I'm offering a choice. Zoe needs treatment immediately, doesn't she? You said yourself you have 2 weeks. This is the fastest, most certain way to save her. Maya shot to her feet, the chair screeching against the wooden floor. She said, I'm not that kind of person, her voice icy. Thank you for your time, but I'll find another way. She turned quickly toward the door, but Ethan's voice followed her, calm and terrifying in its precision. You've already tried everything, Maya. Banks, charities, friends. They all said no. What options do you have left? She froze her hand, gripping the door handle. His words cut like a knife because they were true. She had called every bank, every organization, every contact she had. No one could help. The image of Zoe lying in a hospital bed, an IV needle in her tiny arm, flashed through her mind. Mommy, I want to go home, Zoe had said yesterday, her voice weak. Maya's throat tightened, tears welling. She turned back, looking at Ethan. Why? She asked, her voice hoarse. Why are you doing this? You have everything, money, power. Why me? Ethan was silent for a moment, fingers gently rotating the base of his wine glass. Because I can, he said at last. And because of things beyond your control, Zoe doesn't deserve to suffer. But I'm not a saint, Maya. I want something for myself. Maya sank back into the chair, not because she wanted to, but because her legs could no longer hold her. If I agree, she said, almost whispering, what happens? Will the money be transferred immediately? Ethan nodded. The contract is already prepared. The money will be wired to the hospital within 24 hours. Zoe can begin treatment next week. She bowed her head, gripping the edge of the table. I need time to think. Of course, Ethan said, but don't take too long. Time doesn't wait. Maya left the restaurant like a ghost. She walked down Michigan Avenue, the wind slicing her skin, though she couldn't feel it. Her mind was a storm of emotion, anger, shame, fear, and an overwhelming love for Zoe. She thought of the sleepless nights holding her daughter, the way Zoe giggled while playing tag in the park, and the hopeful look in her eyes when she asked, I'll get better, right, Mommy? When she got home, Zoe was asleep, the picture book still open on her chest. Lisa looked at her with concern. Is everything okay? How is the meeting? Maya only shook her head. I need to be alone for a bit. When Lisa left, Maya sat by Zoe's bed watching her sleep. She considered Ethan's proposal and the price she would pay to save her child. It wasn't like any movie she had ever seen. No evil man cackling, no dramatic music, just a desperate mother and a man with too much money and a hidden heart. She opened her phone, searching again for personal loan options, but only saw the same rejections. She called an old friend in Atlanta, but the answer was still, I'm so sorry, Maya. I'm in a tight spot too. Every call, every search brought her closer to the edge. Finally, she sent Ethan a message. I need to see the contract. The next morning, Maya arrived at the office early, her heart heavy. Ethan had left an envelope on her desk. Inside was a brief document. $300,000 would be transferred immediately upon her signature, with the sole condition being one night at a location designated by Party A. No excess words, no explanations. Just Ethan's signature at the bottom. Maya picked up the pen, her hand trembling. She thought of Zoe, the 6 short months the doctor predicted without treatment. She thought of her daughter's dreams, becoming a veterinarian, raising kittens, traveling to Hawaii. She closed her eyes and signed. Ethan Carter sat alone in his penthouse apartment, a glass of whiskey in hand, reflecting the city lights of Chicago through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was late at night, but he couldn't sleep. The image of Maya Johnson, her eyes burning with anger and desperation at Le Ciel restaurant, haunted him. She had signed the contract, which meant that she would come here tomorrow night, stepping into his world, a world he knew wasn't meant for her. Ethan set down the glass, stood, and walked to the window, gazing at the sparkling headlights that looked like lost stars. The past returned in that moment of stillness, pulling him back to the days he wished he could forget. More than 3 decades ago, Ethan had grown up in a poor neighborhood on the outskirts of Detroit, where rundown houses and pothole-filled streets were all he knew. His family, his parents and younger brother Tommy, lived in a cramped apartment where the smell of mold clung to the walls. His father worked in a factory, and his mother was a janitor, but their wages barely covered rent and cheap groceries. Ethan, then just 12, was always the protector of Tommy, his 8-year-old brother, with golden hair and a smile that lit up the world. Tommy was the light of their family, always bringing laughter, even in the most challenging times. But one winter, Tommy began to run high fevers, cough constantly, and grow weaker by the day. The doctor diagnosed him with bacterial meningitis, a treatable disease if caught early. But the hospital demanded an upfront payment that Ethan's family couldn't afford. His mother begged charities for help. His father worked overtime until he collapsed from exhaustion, and Ethan collected bottles and cans for every penny he could scrape together. But it wasn't enough. Ethan still remembered that night when Tommy held his hand in the emergency room and whispered, "Ethan, I'm so tired, but please don't be sad. Okay." The next morning, Tommy died. Tommy's death carved a deep wound into Ethan's soul. He watched his parents fall apart. His mother cried until she had no tears left, and his father became a silent shadow of himself. Ethan made a vow. Never again would money decide someone's fate. He studied hard, won a scholarship to college, and built Carter Enterprises from a tiny office into a multi-million-dollar firm. But success never filled the hole Tommy left behind. Ethan became isolated, unable to believe in love or sincerity. To him, every relationship was a transaction, money for loyalty, power for respect. When Maya told him about Zoe, about the cancer, about the $300,000 she needed, Ethan felt a part of Tommy come alive in her daughter's story. He wanted to help not just out of compassion, but because he vowed to himself all those years ago. But he was also a selfish man, imprisoned by his loneliness. The offer he made to Maya one night, in exchange for the money, wasn't just a way to save Zoe. It was a twisted test of his own making. He wanted to see if anyone would willingly accept him even once, without caring about his wealth or power. But even as he proposed it, Ethan felt disgusted with himself. He returned to the desk, opened his laptop, and checked the email from his lawyer. The contract had been sent to Maya, and she had signed it. Ethan closed his eyes, guilt rising in waves. He thought of Maya, a mother willing to do anything for her child, and wondered how cruelly he had cornered her. He remembered the look in her eyes at the restaurant, anger laced with helplessness, and questioned whether she would ever be able to forgive him, or if he would ever forgive himself. Ethan walked over to the bookshelf and pulled out an old folded photo. He and Tommy stood in front of a Christmas tree they had built from scavenged branches. Tommy was beaming, and Ethan, though just a boy, already wore the serious face of an adult. "I promised I'd protect you," Ethan whispered to the photo, his voice rough. But he had failed Tommy. With Zoe, he had a chance to make it right. But what price was too high? His phone buzzed, snapping him out of the memory. A message from Maya. "I'll be there on time. Please, don't change your mind about the money." Ethan stared at the message, a stone forming in his chest. He typed back, "I won't change. The funds will be transferred the moment you arrive." But after hitting send, he tossed the phone onto the sofa and buried his face in his hands. He didn't know if he was saving or destroying a life. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the office early, trying to lose himself in meetings and reports. But Maya's face kept intruding her quiet presence at the keyboard, her red eyes from the day before. He realized he knew very little about her, other than that she was a diligent worker and a devoted mother. He had seen her in the office hundreds of times, but had never really seen her a black woman, with neatly tied curly hair, always dressed in modest but elegant clothing, always wearing a polite smile, even when her eyes showed exhaustion. That afternoon, Ethan canceled a vital meeting to prepare for the night. He returned to his apartment, set the dining table and placed a bottle of wine in 2 glasses. But everything felt wrong. With its minimalist furniture and expensive abstract art, his penthouse felt more like a museum than a home. He wondered what Maya would think when she walked in. Would she feel intimidated? Or just repulsed? At 6:30 p.m., Ethan stood in front of the mirror adjusting his shirt. He looked into his own eyes, the eyes of a man who had achieved everything, yet still felt empty. "What the hell are you doing, Ethan?" he asked himself. But there was no answer. Only one truth remained. Maya was coming, and he would have to face the consequences of the offer he had made. Maya stood before Ethan Carter's penthouse door, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst from her chest. The Chicago night was freezing, but the trembling in her body wasn't from the weather. She wore a simple black dress, her curly hair tied back neatly, her hands clutching her purse, as if holding on to the last bit of control she had left. The clock showed 8:00 p.m., precisely as she had promised in her message to Ethan. She took a deep breath and knocked, and the sound echoed like a sentence being passed. The door opened, and Ethan appeared wearing a rolled-up white shirt, his dark brown hair slightly tousled. "Maya," he said in a low voice. His usual cold gaze had been replaced with an unexpected gentleness. "Please, come in." Maya stepped over the threshold, feeling like she was entering another world. The apartment was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering Chicago skyline, the minimalist decor exuding quiet luxury. The space was silent, save for the soft strains of jazz floating from hidden speakers. Ethan led her to the dining table, where 2 wine glasses and an uncorked bottle were already set. "Would you like a drink?" he asked gently. Maya shook her head and sat down, still gripping her purse. "I want to get this over with," she said hoarsely, avoiding his eyes. Ethan paused, looking at her momentarily, then sat across from her. "Maya, before anything happens, I want you to know that the money has already been transferred. $300,000 are now in the hospital's account. Zoe begins treatment tomorrow." Maya looked up, stunned. "Already transferred? But I haven't." Ethan raised a hand to stop her. "I don't want you to feel coerced. This is your choice, not an obligation." His words confused her. She had prepared herself for a cold transaction, but the sincerity in his voice shook her. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this? I don't understand." Ethan was silent, swirling the wine in his glass. Have you ever felt like you're alive but not living? He asked, his gaze distant. Maya furrowed her brow. Not replying, but the question struck something deep within her. Ethan continued, his voice steady. I have everything: money, power, recognition. But I'm lonely, Maya. And when you spoke about Zoe, about your love for her, I saw something I've never had. I wanted to help, but I also wanted to feel something real, even for one night. Maya looked at him for the first time, not as a powerful man, but as a human being with wounds of his own. She thought of Zoe, of the nights she held her daughter through tears, of the desperation that had brought her here. I'm not here for you, she said firmly. I'm here for my daughter. Ethan nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. I know, and that's why I respect you. They sat in silence for a moment. The tension between them was not what she had expected. Ethan stood, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled out a small photo. He handed it to her. This is my little brother Tommy, he said. In the picture, a blond boy beamed beside a younger Ethan, already looking serious. He died when I was 12, because we couldn't afford treatment. Maya held the photo, a familiar ache rising in her chest. I'm sorry, she whispered. Ethan shook his head. Don't be. I'm telling you because I want you to understand. I don't like Zoe to have the same fate as Tommy. Maya placed the photo down, her eyes meeting his. You didn't have to do this to help Zoe. You could have just given the money. Ethan gave a sad smile. I know, but I made a mistake. I put you in an unfair position. If you want to leave now, you still can. The money is yours no matter what. His words hit her like a jolt. Maya stared at him, searching for signs of deceit, but all she saw was sincerity. She thought of Zoe, the contract, and the whispers she'd heard around the office. But then she thought of herself, a mother, a woman who had fought alone for too long. I don't want to leave, she said softly, almost a whisper. Not because of the money, but because I see that you're fighting too, just like me. Ethan froze, his eyes lighting with an emotion she couldn't name. He stood and walked toward her but didn't touch her. Are you sure, Maya? She nodded, feeling a strange sense of freedom. That night wasn't what she had imagined. There was no coldness, no demands. They talked about dreams, fears, things they'd never told anyone. Ethan spoke of his rough childhood in Detroit. Maya shared her dream of becoming an education consultant, which was shelved when she became pregnant with Zoe. There were moments of laughter, silence, and a quiet understanding between them. When dawn approached, Maya left the apartment before sunrise, feeling different. That night hadn't been a transaction, it had been a connection. Not perfect, but real. She drove to the hospital where Zoe was waiting. A message from Dr. Peterson appeared. Treatment begins today. Payment confirmed. Maya hugged her phone, tears streaming down her face. Zoe would live. And maybe Maya would find a way to live again too. Ethan stood at the window in the penthouse watching the city wake. He thought of Maya, of her strength and her pain. He opened his phone and typed a message. Thank you for last night. Wishing Zoe a speedy recovery. But he didn't send it, afraid it would make her uncomfortable. He knew that night had changed him, and he hoped, however quietly, that it had changed her too. Maya sat beside Zoe's hospital bed, gently holding her daughter's small hand. Morning light streamed through the Chicago Mercy hospital room window, casting a glow on Zoe's face, now rosier than it had been just a few weeks before. The immunotherapy combined with targeted medication was working miracles. Wearing a rare smile, Dr. Peterson informed her yesterday that Zoe's blood markers had significantly improved. He said that if this continues, we may discuss complete remission within a few months. Maya felt as though a massive weight had been lifted from her chest, but the joy was still shadowed by another heavy feeling. the price she had paid to make this treatment possible. That night in Ethan Carter's penthouse still haunted her. It hadn't unfolded the way she expected. Ethan had not been cold or demanding. He had talked shared dreams and fears and let her decide freely. Yet despite all that, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she had lost a part of herself. Every morning she woke up and looked in the mirror, asking herself, who am I? A mother who sacrificed everything, or a woman who sold herself? That question gnawed at her, making sleep difficult and smiles harder to come by. Unaware of her mother's inner torment, Zoe held up a new drawing, a house with 3 people standing in the yard. She said brightly, "That's you, me and the kitten will have when I get better." Maya smiled and brushed Zoe's hair. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Where is this house?" Zoe shrugged. "It's just in my head, but I want it to be real." Maya hugged her daughter tightly, hiding the ache inside. She had saved Zoe, but could she save herself? Back at Carter Enterprises, Maya tried to maintain a standard facade. She typed up reports, answered emails, and attended meetings, but the glances from her co-workers unsettled her. Lisa, her closest friend at the company, was still kind and concerned, but others had started whispering. Maya overheard 2 accountants talking during one lunch break in the staff lounge. "She's been seeing the big boss a lot lately. Bet she's getting special treatment," one said with a sneer. "Black single mom, and somehow climbs that high." "Please, nothing's that simple," the other replied, scoffing. Maya stood behind the door, clutching her coffee cup as her face flushed with heat. She wanted to walk in and confront them, but instead she turned away silently. Their words didn't just offend her. They struck at her deepest fear that people would believe she had used her body to gain favor. Ethan, meanwhile, maintained a strictly professional distance at the office. He didn't call her into his office, didn't send personal messages, and only communicated through work emails like he did with any other employee. But Maya noticed the small gestures a get-well card for Zoe sent via internal mail, a quiet question in the elevator. "How's Zoe doing?" To which she had replied, "Better. Thank you." And I stepped out when the doors opened, not wanting to prolong the exchange. She didn't know how to face him. He was the man who saved Zoe, but also the man who had forced her into a corner with no easy way out. Outside of work, Maya spent her time at the hospital with Zoe, caring for her and trying to reconnect with herself. She began writing in a journal, pouring out the chaos in her mind. "I did this for Zoe," she wrote it one night, "but why do I feel like I betrayed myself? Ethan didn't force me, but he had power and I didn't. Was that a choice?" Putting those thoughts into words offered some relief, but didn't erase the guilt. Lisa invited Maya to lunch at a small cafe near the office one afternoon. "You're hiding something from me, aren't you?" Lisa asked, her eyes filled with concern. Maya hesitated, then shared part of the truth that Zoe was undergoing cancer treatment, and she was struggling with the cost. Lisa took her hand. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? I don't have much, but I could have helped." Maya smiled and touched, but shook her head. "Thank you, but I've already found a way." Lisa frowned. "What way?" "You didn't do anything reckless, did you?" Maya looked out the window, avoiding her friend's eyes. "I just did what I had to do for Zoe." Back at the hospital, Maya received a call from Dr. Peterson. "I have good news," he said. "Zoe's latest test results are auspicious. The cancer cells have decreased significantly. She's responding better than we expected." Maya collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of joy this time. She ran into Zoe's room and hugged her daughter tightly. "You're going to get better, sweetheart," she whispered. Zoe smiled and wrapped her arms around her. "I know, Mommy. You're my superhero." But even that joy couldn't fully erase the darkness in Maya's heart. She still thought of Ethan, the contract, and the office whispers. She wondered if she could ever live with her decision, or if it would remain a scar that never healed. That night, after Zoe had fallen asleep, Maya opened her journal and wrote, "Zoe will live. That's what matters most. But I must find a way to live again, not just for her, but for myself." Maya didn't know that Ethan was also struggling in his pen in his penthouse house. He opened an email from the hospital, confirming the $300,000 payment had been received. He looked at the photo of Tommy on his desk and wondered whether his little brother would be proud of him or ashamed that he had turned a good deed into a selfish transaction. Maya stepped into the small cafe on the corner of Randolph Street, where the soft yellow lights and the scent of freshly roasted coffee offered warmth against the chill of a March evening in Chicago. She wore a dark blue sweater, her curly hair tied high, trying to maintain a calm exterior, though her heart was pounding. Ethan Carter texted her that morning, asking to meet to check Zoe's health progress. Maya hesitated, but eventually agreed, not because she wanted to see him again, but because she felt she owed him a thank you, no matter how uneasy that made her feel. Ethan was already seated at a table near the window, holding a cup of black coffee, eyes gazing out at the busy street. When he saw her, he stood and pulled out a chair with polite composure. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice low, but no longer as cold as during their meeting at Le Ciel. Maya sat down, her hand gripping her purse strap. She replied, "I don't have much time," keeping her tone guarded. "Zoe has a checkup this afternoon." Ethan nodded as if expecting her wariness. "How's Zoe doing?" he asked, his sincere expression catching Maya off guard. She hesitated, then answered, "Much better. The doctors say she's responding well to treatment. If things stay on track, we could be talking about complete remission." A faint smile crossed Ethan's face, something Maya had never seen on him before. "I'm glad to hear that. Zoe's a strong little girl." Maya looked at him, searching for any trace of insincerity, but all she saw was genuine concern. She lowered her voice. "Thank you for helping her. I don't know what I would have done if—" She stopped, not wanting her emotions to spill. Ethan raised a hand, gently signaling she didn't need to continue. "You don't owe me a thank you, Maya. I did it because I could." But his voice carried a hint of hesitation, as if something was left unsaid. Maya frowned slightly, feeling compelled to ask, "Why did you do it?" "I don't believe someone like you helps others without a reason." Ethan was quiet, momentarily turning the coffee cup in his hands. "Do you want the truth?" he asked, meeting her gaze. Maya nodded. He sighed, staring out the window. "When I was 12, my younger brother Tommy died of meningitis. My family couldn't afford the treatment. I swore that if I ever had the means, I wouldn't let anyone lose a loved one just because of money." Maya's chest tightened. She hadn't expected that this powerful man, seemingly invincible, carried a wound so raw. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't know." Ethan shook his head. "No one knows. I don't like talking about it. But when you spoke about Zoe, I saw Tommy in her. I couldn't walk away." She looked at him not as a CEO, but as a man carrying scars. "But why that way?" she asked, her voice trembling, as she recalled the night in his penthouse. Ethan lowered his head, his fingers tightening around the cup. "Because I'm a selfish man. Maya, I'm lonely, and I thought I wanted something for myself. But I was wrong. I put you in an unfair position." His admission stunned her. She hadn't expected him to acknowledge it, and the sincerity in his tone unsettled her. She wanted to be angry, to blame him, but part of her also felt understanding. "You didn't force me," she said almost in a whisper. "I chose Zoe." Ethan looked at her eyes full of emotion. And that's why I respect you. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met. Maya shook her head, offering a bittersweet smile. I'm not strong. I'm just a mother trying to keep her child alive. They sat in silence for a moment. The tension between them had eased. A server brought over a plate of scones, and Ethan pushed it toward her. You should eat something. You look like you haven't been sleeping. Maya frowned slightly, but picked one up the moment, feeling more natural than she had expected. What about you? She asked, shifting the conversation. Outside of work. How do you live? Ethan chuckled softly the first time she'd seen him relaxed. Not much. I run, and sometimes I watch old movies. But mostly I work. Carter Enterprises is my whole world. Maya frowned. That sounds sad. No family, no friends. Ethan shrugged. My family drifted after Tommy died. Friends. I'm not good at keeping them. Maya found herself unexpectedly wanting to know more. So how did you build the company? I heard you started from nothing. Ethan spoke steadily, sharing stories of working 18-hour days, rejections, and the moment he signed his first deal. Maya listened, realizing that beneath the cold exterior was a man who had fought to escape poverty, just as she had. In turn, Maya shared her own story. She talked about her dream of becoming an educational consultant, which was pushed aside when she got pregnant with Zoe at 24. She spoke of her ex-husband who left when Zoe was 2, leaving her with bills and a broken heart. I learned not to rely on anyone, she said firmly. It's just Zoe and me against the world. Ethan looked at her with profound admiration. You've done better than you think. Zoe's lucky to have a mother like you. Maya smiled genuinely for the first time in weeks. Their conversation extended longer than expected, from coffee to a light dinner. By the time they left the cafe, it was dark. Ethan offered to walk her home. Maya declined, but he insisted on calling her a cab. You need rest, he said. And let me know if Zoe ever needs anything. On the taxi ride home, Maya thought about the evening. She wasn't sure how she felt about Ethan. He had saved Zoe, but he had also hurt her. And yet today, she had seen someone else. Not a cold executive, but a man with scars, not unlike her own. She opened her phone and saw a message from him. Thank you for tonight. I wish Zoe a speedy recovery. She didn't reply, but her lips curled into a faint smile. At the hospital, Maya found Zoe playing with blocks alongside a nurse. Mommy's home. Zoe squealed, running into her arms. Maya held her close, feeling a flicker of hope. Zoe was healing. And maybe, just maybe, she would find a way to heal herself too. Maya stood in front of the mirror in the break room at Carter Enterprises, adjusting her high-tied curls and taking deep breaths to calm the unease within her. It had been 3 months since that night in Ethan's penthouse, and Zoe was now nearing complete remission. Her regular meetings with Ethan at the cafe had become a part of Maya's life, though she still hadn't defined their relationship. But today, what unsettled her wasn't Ethan, the looks and whispers growing louder around the office. That morning, as Maya walked into the conference room to present the Morrison report, she immediately sensed a shift in the air. Some employees gave her awkward smiles. Others avoided her eyes entirely. After the meeting, she overheard a hallway conversation. She's cozying up to the boss for a promotion, a woman sneered. Black single mom, and Carter's interested. There's got to be something going on, a man replied with a mocking laugh. Maya stood around the corner, clutching her folder like she'd been slapped. Those words didn't just insult her. They struck at her deepest fear that people would see her not as a mother who sacrificed everything for her daughter, but as an opportunist. She returned to her desk and tried to focus on her screen, but the whispers cut through her like knives. Lisa, her close colleague and friend, noticed the change in her when she brought over coffee. "You okay, Maya? You look pale," Lisa asked, sitting beside her. Maya hesitated, then sighed. "People are talking about me. And Ethan. They think I'm using him." Lisa frowned. "Who would say that? You work harder than anyone here. Don't let that nonsense get to you." But Maya shook her head, her voice low. "It's not that simple, Lisa. They're not just talking about my job. They're talking about who I am, what I look like." Lisa gripped her hand, her eyes steady. "You're a fantastic mother, an excellent employee, and a loyal friend. If they can't see that they're not worth your energy." Maya gave a faint smile, touched by Lisa's support, but the pain still lingered. She knew these whispers weren't just curiosity. They carried undertones of racism and classism. How could a black, single mother possibly be worthy of someone like Ethan Carter? Meanwhile, Ethan wasn't immune to pressure either. During a board meeting that afternoon, veteran member Harold Bennett suddenly mentioned Ethan's involvement with an employee. "I hear you've grown close to someone on staff, Carter," he said coolly. "We need to ensure this doesn't affect the company's reputation." Sitting at the table's head, Ethan gripped his pen tightly, but kept his composure. "My personal life has no bearing on business," he replied sharply. "Maya Johnson is a capable employee, and she's evaluated based on her work, not gossip." Bennett raised an eyebrow. "Just a reminder, Carter. Someone like you needs to be careful with your choices." The word choices were stressed with a clear implication about race and class. Ethan met his gaze squarely. "I am careful, Mr. Bennett, and I expect everyone here to be cautious when making baseless judgments." The room fell tense and quiet. No one dared to continue the line of conversation. After the meeting, Ethan returned to his office, closed the door, and sat down rubbing his temples. He knew the rumors about him and Maya were spreading within the company and in Chicago's business circles. Some partners had hinted at it with fake smiles and veiled questions. He didn't care about them, but he worried for Maya. He knew the whispers would hit her harder, not just because she was an employee, but because of the biases she faced as a black woman. That evening, Ethan texted Maya, inviting her to dinner at a smaller, more discreet restaurant than Le Ciel. Maya accepted, though she had a heavy heart. Ethan was already waiting when she arrived, his gaze softer than usual. "Are you all right?" he asked as soon as she sat down. Maya shrugged and forced a smile. "Just a long day. Zoe's okay. That's what matters." But Ethan leaned forward, his voice calm and serious. "Not just Zoe, Maya. I want to know how you're doing. I've heard what's happening at the office." Maya froze, surprised he knew. She looked down, turning her water glass. "People are saying things. They think I'm using you. Or worse." She paused, her voice tight. "They say things that make me feel like I don't belong here." Ethan clenched his fist under the table, his eyes darkening. "I'm sorry, Maya. I didn't realize it had gotten that bad. But you do belong here more than anyone. You work hard, and you're the best in your team." Maya looked at him with a mix of gratitude and doubt. "You don't need to say that to make me feel better. I know who I am, and I know what they see when they look at me." Ethan shook his head, his voice firm. "I mean it. And if anyone in this company crosses the line, I will handle it. That's a promise." His words caught Maya off guard. She had never seen him so resolute, not for himself, but for her. "Why do you care?" she asked softly. Ethan was silent for a moment, then said, "Because you deserve respect, and because I don't want you to feel like you're fighting alone." The rest of the dinner was lighter. Maya told stories about Zoe, how she'd started begging for a real kitten after drawing dozens of cat pictures. Ethan laughed, sharing how he once tried to raise a dog as a child, only for it to destroy his mother's vegetable garden. They talked about favorite movies and childhood dreams. And for the first time, Maya felt like she was talking to a friend, not a boss, or the man who had once made a devastating proposal. When they left the restaurant, Ethan walked her to the taxi, his gaze lingering longer than usual. He said, "You're not alone, Maya," before closing the car door. "Remember that." Maya looked at him through the window, her heart tangled in confusion. She didn't know if she could trust him completely, but for the first time, she felt a flicker of light in the darkness. Maya sat in the examination room at Chicago Mercy Hospital, her fingers tightly interlaced, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might leap out of her chest. Dr. Peterson entered holding a stack of test results, the smile on his face making her stop breathing. "Maya, I have excellent news," he said warmly. "Zoe is officially in complete remission. No cancer cells were detected. With regular checkups, she can live an everyday life." Maya felt the world stop. She covered her mouth as tears welled, not from pain, but from overwhelming joy. "Really? She's okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Peterson nodded. "Zoe's a fighter, and you're an extraordinary mother." Maya laughed through her tears and hugged him in a spontaneous burst of gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you, all of you." She rushed into Zoe's room where her daughter was building with blocks alongside a nurse. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Zoe asked, looking up with wide eyes. Maya knelt and hugged her tightly. "You're healthy, sweetheart. You've beaten it." Zoe grinned and wrapped her tiny arms around her mother. "I knew it. Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" Maya nodded, unable to stop smiling. "As much ice cream as you want." On the way home, they stopped at a little ice cream shop. Zoe picked a chocolate sundae, while Maya watched her eat, her heart full of joy, but tinged with lingering worry. Remission was a victory, but she knew Zoe's journey still required monitoring. More than that, Maya was still wrestling with what had transpired between her and Ethan Carter, the man who had saved Zoe, but also left her with a scar that wouldn't heal easily. Over the past few months, Maya and Ethan have met more often, not just at cafes, but during quiet evenings in the park or at small restaurants. Their conversations grew deeper, touching on childhood memories and dreams for the future. Maya saw that Ethan wasn't just a wealthy man, he carried deep loss and profound loneliness. But the whispers at Carter Enterprises still wounded her. She continued hearing more from colleagues' comments that hinted she was a gold digger or a woman using her looks to climb up. The racial and class-based prejudice made her want to retreat. But Ethan was always there, discreetly protecting her and handling the sources of the rumors. One evening, Ethan invited Maya and Zoe to his apartment for dinner, the first time Zoe would meet him outside the get well cards he had sent. Maya was nervous, unsure how Zoe would react to Ethan, whom she only knew as Mommy's boss. But when they arrived, Ethan had prepared a simple dinner, homemade pizza and salad, that made Zoe squeal with delight. "Did you make pizza?" "That's so cool," Zoe said, taking her seat with a beaming smile. Ethan laughed awkwardly while cutting the pizza. "I'm not very good at it, but I tried." During dinner, Zoe talked about her dream of becoming a veterinarian and drawings, and asked Ethan if he had ever had pets. Ethan shared stories about a dog he had as a child, making Zoe giggle. Maya watched them, feeling an unexpected warmth. Once a distant boss, Ethan now listened patiently as Zoe excitedly spoke about kittens. When Zoe ran off to look at Ethan's book collection, Maya turned to him. "Thank you for tonight. She's so happy." Ethan looked at her, his gaze soft. "I'm happy too. Zoe is special. And you?" You did everything to keep her here. Maya lowered her eyes, the guilt surfacing again. Not everything I did was right, Ethan. He shook his head. You chose Zoe. That was the right thing. Later that night, as Maya tucked Zoe in, the little girl asked unexpectedly, Mommy, Mr. Ethan is friendly, huh? Can he play with me again? Maya smiled, brushing Zoe's hair. If you want, I'll invite him. A small door was opening inside her, even if she feared what lay behind it. A few weeks later, Ethan made a proposal that stunned her. He wanted to adopt Zoe formally. I know it's a big thing, he said, sitting across from her at their usual cafe. But I love Zoe like my own, and I want us to be a family if you allow it. Maya stared at him. Her heart tangled. She had begun falling in love with Ethan, not because of his money or out of gratitude, but because of who he was. Yet adoption was a massive step. I need time, she said, and I need to ask Zoe. That night, Maya sat down with Zoe and explained in simple terms, Mr. Ethan wants to become your dad officially. What do you think? Zoe stayed quiet for a moment, then looked up with shining eyes. Will he stay with us forever? Like a real family? Maya nodded, her throat tight. Zoe grinned. I want that. I like Mr. Ethan. Maya returned to Ethan, her eyes glowing. Zoe said yes. And so do I. Ethan took her hand, his eyes filled with emotion. Thank you, Maya. Thank you for giving me this chance. They began the adoption process, and Maya could feel a family forming, not from a contract, but from love. Meanwhile, Maya decided to return to college, enrolling part-time in an educational counseling program. She wanted to pursue her dream for herself and show Zoe that her mother could rise above anything. Ethan supported her, helping coordinate her schedule, and even hiring a tutor to assist Zoe while Maya studied. These small steps made Maya feel alive again, not just as a mother, but as a woman with her own goals. But the challenges weren't over. The rumors at work hadn't stopped. One day, she received an anonymous email. Do you think you deserve Carter? Keep dreaming? Maya deleted the email, but it left a scar. Still, when she looked at Zoe, now drawing a picture of a family of 3, she whispered to herself, I won't let them break me. Maya stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, gently smoothing out the simple ivory wedding dress, its delicate lace tracing her figure. Morning sunlight poured through the window of the Chicago home she now shared with Zoe and Ethan after he had officially adopted Zoe. Today was their wedding day, a small backyard ceremony with only a few close friends and colleagues. But Maya's heart beat, not only with excitement, but a mix of joy, gratitude, and a subtle worry about what lay ahead. Zoe, now 8, entered the room wearing a soft yellow dress, as the flower girl, her curly hair braided into 2 plaits adorned with tiny flowers. Mommy, you look like a princess, Zoe squealed, hopping onto the bed for a better look. Maya laughed and turned to hug her. Thank you, sweetheart. And you look beautiful too, my little girl. But she noticed a rare shadow in Zoe's eyes, a quiet moment of reflection in a child, usually so full of light. Are you okay? Zoe, Maya asked, sitting beside her. Zoe nodded, then hesitated. I'm happy you and Mr. Ethan are getting married, but I'm a little scared. If you have Dad, Ethan, you won't need me as much anymore, right? Maya felt her heart clench. She pulled Zoe close, brushing her hair gently. Oh, sweetheart, never. That will never happen. You and I were a team always. Dad, Ethan isn't replacing you. He's making our family bigger and stronger. Do you understand? Zoe nodded, hugging her tighter. I understand. I want us always to be a family. That conversation made Maya realize that Zoe, young as she was, had felt the weight of all the changes in their lives. She decided the wedding wouldn't just be about her and Ethan, but Zoe too, a promise that they were a real family from this day forward, no matter what challenges came. The backyard was decorated, but warmly strands of lights hung from the trees. Wooden tables covered in white linens, and a path of daisies led to the ceremony table. Lisa, Maya's close friend, helped coordinate everything. Ethan waited in a deep blue suit at the altar, his eyes lighting up as Maya stepped outside. Zoe walked ahead, scattering petals with a serious expression that made guests smile. As Maya reached Ethan, he took her hand and whispered, "You're even more beautiful than I imagined." She smiled, the nerves melting away. The officiant, a longtime friend of Ethan's, began the ceremony. "Today, we're not just witnessing the union of Maya and Ethan, but the formation of a family," he said, glancing at Zoe, standing proudly next to her mother. At Maya's request, the ceremony included a special vow to Zoe. Ethan knelt in front of her, his voice filled with emotion. "Zoe, I, your dad, promise to love you, protect you, and always be by your side. I promise to teach you how to ride a bike, to read to you at bedtime, and to do everything I can to make you happy." Zoe looked at him, her eyes shimmering. "I promise to be a good daughter and love you both forever," she said, her voice clear and innocent. Maya couldn't hold back her tears. She took Zoe's hand and added, "And I promise always to love and protect you no matter what. We are a family now and always." The guests applauded, some wiping tears from their cheeks, moved by the moment. As Ethan and Maya exchanged vows, they looked at each other with deep understanding. "Maya," Ethan said, "you've taught me that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice we make every day. I promise to choose you and Zoe through every challenge." Maya, her voice trembling, replied, "Ethan, you gave us a future I never dared to dream of. I promise to love you, not for what you've done, but for who you are." When they were pronounced husband and wife, Ethan kissed Maya, and Zoe squealed, jumping into their arms. The three of them stood there wrapped in each other amid the sound of applause, and for a moment all the past pain, contracts, rumors, prejudice faded into nothing. The reception was filled with laughter and soft music. Zoe ran around the yard playing with Lisa's kids, while Maya and Ethan mingled with guests. But Maya still noticed a few lingering glances, subtle enough to make her uneasy. One of the accountants, who had once gossiped behind her back, came to offer a forced smile. "Congratulations, Maya." "She said you're fortunate," her tone layered with implication. Maya smiled politely, but her hand tightened around her glass. Ethan, standing beside her, sensed the tension. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "Don't let them get to you. This is our day." That night, after the guests had gone and Zoe was fast asleep, Maya and Ethan sat on the backyard bench watching the softly glowing string lights. "Did you ever think we'd make it here?" Maya asked, resting her head on his shoulder. Ethan chuckled. "No. But I knew I didn't want to lose you from the moment we talked at that cafe." Maya looked up at him, her eyes tender. "Thank you for being patient, for staying, even when I pushed you away." Ethan took her hand. "And thank you for giving me a family. But Maya, I know it won't be easy. Rumors, judgmental stares. I won't let you face that alone." Maya nodded, feeling a new strength rise within her. "We'll face it together, for Zoe, and for us." She thought about Zoe, the promise they made during the ceremony, and the road ahead. She was now back in school, inching closer to her dream of becoming an educational consultant. She had a family not perfect, but honest. And while society's prejudice still lurked in the shadows, Maya knew she was strong enough to face it, because she no longer had to fight alone. Maya stood in the kitchen of their new home in the suburbs of Seattle, staring out the window as light rain fell over the towering pines. The spacious house with its lush backyard was a far cry from their cramped Chicago apartment, but she still hadn't adjusted to the stillness of this city. It had been 3 months since their family, Maya, Ethan, and Zoe, moved here after a major conglomerate acquired Carter Enterprises. Ethan accepted an offer to manage the Pacific Northwest Division. But today, Maya felt heavier than usual, not just from ongoing fatigue, but from a secret she had just discovered: she was pregnant. Ethan walked into the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, bringing with him the scent of freshly brewed coffee. "You okay?" he asked, noticing the distant look in her eyes. Maya nodded, but her gaze drifted. "Just still getting used to this place. And I feel a little tired." She wasn't ready to talk about the pregnancy yet. She wanted to confirm everything with her doctor first. Ethan kissed her forehead and poured her a cup. "We'll be all right. Seattle needs a little time." The move hadn't been as smooth as they'd hoped. Ethan loved his new role, but the leadership pressure had him working late hours. Zoe, now 10, had resisted the move from Chicago, worried about losing her friends and the familiar school environment. "I don't want to go anywhere," she had said, eyes red with tears. Maya and Ethan had sat down with her, explaining that this was an opportunity for a better life. "We'll always be together," Ethan had promised. Zoe reluctantly agreed. But in Seattle, she became more withdrawn, often sitting alone with a book or drawing, rather than trying to make new friends. Maya, too, faced her battles. She continued her part-time online university courses, pursuing a degree in educational counseling, but juggling school, caring for Zoe, and adjusting to life in Seattle left her exhausted. She missed Chicago evenings, when Lisa stopped by or Zoe played with neighbors. Here she felt adrift, like a stranger in her own life. One afternoon, Maya picked Zoe up from her new school, a sleek, modern building with a large playground. Zoe walked out, backpack heavy on her shoulders, her face unreadable. "How was today, sweetheart?" Maya asked during the drive. Zoe shrugged. "Okay. The kids don't talk to me much." Maya reached over and held her hand, her heart aching. "They need time. You're terrific, and they'll see that soon." Zoe nodded, but her eyes stayed distant. That night, Maya received her test results from the doctor. She was 8 weeks pregnant. She sat on the couch, hands resting on her belly, feeling a wave of emotion, joy, but also fear. A new baby was a gift, but she questioned whether she had the strength to care for an infant, while Zoe still needed her, and their life in Seattle was far from stable. She decided to tell Ethan, but wanted to choose the right moment. The next day, Ethan came home early, carrying a box of donuts, Zoe's favorite. "Thought we could have a family night," he said, setting the box on the table. Zoe looked up from her homework and grinned. "The chocolate one's mine." Maya watched them, warmth filling her heart. After dinner, they played a puzzle game, and Zoe laughed for the first time in weeks. Under the table, Maya held Ethan's hand and whispered, "Thank you." Ethan winked. "We're a team, remember?" After Zoe went to bed, Maya pulled Ethan outside into the backyard where the moonlight shone through pine branches. "I need to tell you something," she began softly. "I'm pregnant." Ethan froze, then his face lit up. "Really? Are we having a baby?" He hugged her tightly, but then sensed her hesitation. "You're not happy," Maya sighed, sitting down on the patio bench. "I am happy, but I'm scared too. Zoe's struggling in school. I'm trying to keep up with college. And a baby. It changes everything." Ethan sat beside her, taking her hand. We've gotten through more complex things, Maya. Zoe will be okay. And you're an incredible mother. I'll be here every step. Maya looked at him, a portion of her anxiety easing. Promise me. He nodded. Promise. They decided not to tell Zoe yet, wanting to wait until after the first trimester. But Maya knew Zoe needed support now. She began spending more time with her, taking her to parks, the library, and a local art club. Slowly, Zoe began to open up, befriending a girl named Mia, and her smile returned more often. Mia says I draw well, Zoe said one evening, her eyes sparkling. Maya hugged her. You're Mommy's little artist. Meanwhile, Maya faced another challenge: social judgment in Seattle. At a parent meeting at Zoe's school, she overheard one mother whisper to another, "She's Carter's wife." It doesn't look like it. Maya smiled politely but felt the sting. She knew those words weren't just about appearance, but about her race and background. She told Ethan later, and he squeezed her hand. They don't know how strong you are, but I do. Despite the fatigue from pregnancy, Maya kept studying. One essay she wrote on education for underprivileged children received high praise from her professor. You have great potential, Maya, he said. The compliment made her feel closer to her dream. Yet one night, holding her belly, thinking about the child to come, she couldn't help but ask herself, can I do it all? Maya sat in the armchair in the living room of their Seattle home, the soft yellow lamplight glowing over the education textbook she was reading for her university class. Beside her, baby Noah, now 3 months old, slept peacefully in his crib, his steady breathing like a soothing rhythm. It had been 6 months since Noah was born, a healthy baby boy, with curly hair like his mother and blue eyes like his father, Ethan. But tonight, Maya's mind wasn't at ease. Zoe, now 14, had been more withdrawn than usual, and Maya could feel an unspoken question hanging in the air. Zoe walked into the room wearing a hoodie and jeans, her curly hair tied up high. She sat on the sofa across from her mother, absently twirling her phone. Mom, can I ask you something? Zoe said, her voice hesitant. Maya closed her book and set it on the table, her heart beating faster. Of course, sweetheart. What is it? Zoe bit her lip, eyes fixed on the floor. Today at school, I overheard some teachers talking. They said, you and Dad met in a weird situation. One even said you were in serious trouble when I was sick. Is that true? Maya felt her blood run cold. She had known this day would come when Zoe would be old enough to ask about the past, but she still wasn't ready. She took a deep breath, trying to keep her voice calm. What exactly did you hear? Zoe shrugged, still not meeting her mother's gaze. They said you and Dad weren't the type to end up together because he's rich and you weren't. And they said he helped pay for my cancer treatment, but they didn't explain how. I want to know the truth. Maya looked at her daughter and realized Zoe was no longer the little 8-year-old who once worried only about kittens. She was now a thoughtful, perceptive teen who needed honesty. Maya stood, walked over, and sat beside Zoe, taking her hand. Sweetheart, I'll tell you, but in a version that's right for where you are now. Okay, I'll share more when you're older, if you still want to know. Zoe nodded, eyes shining with curiosity. Maya began, her voice steady but slow. When you had cancer, I didn't have enough money to pay for your treatment. I tried everything, loans, charities, but nothing worked. Your dad, Ethan, was my boss at the time. He offered to pay for your treatment. That's how we were able to save you. Zoe frowned slightly. But why did he help? He didn't know you very well, did he? Maya paused, choosing her words carefully. Your dad had his reasons. He lost someone he loved because they couldn't afford treatment, and he didn't want that to happen to you. But we didn't fall in love right away. We slowly became a family through conversations, shared time, and getting to know one another honestly. Zoe was quiet, absorbing everything. So, those teachers were right. Aren't you and Dad the usual type of couple? Maya smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. They might think that. I was a black single mom, not wealthy. He was a white man, prosperous. But we fell in love for who we are, not for appearances or money. Zoe nodded, though a shadow of worry lingered in her expression. I just don't want people thinking badly about you. You're the best person I know. Maya hugged her, tears brimming in her eyes. Thank you, sweetheart. And don't worry about what others say. They don't know our story. What matters is that our family, Dad, you and Noah, sticks together. Zoe hugged her back tightly. I get it. But I promise you'll tell me more when I'm older. Maya nodded. I promise. The conversation relieved Maya, but reminded her that the past was still part of them. She knew Zoe would ask more someday, but for tonight, honesty had deepened their bond. She looked at Noah, thinking about the journey from the day she signed that contract with Ethan to now a family built on sacrifice, love, and trust. Life in Seattle continued with its small challenges. Ethan worked longer hours, often coming home with a tense look. Though tired from caring for Noah and juggling her studies, Maya tried to keep the family connected. She organized game nights and movie evenings, where Zoe taught Noah to clap, and Ethan told awkward dad jokes. But societal judgment still lingered. At a corporate event in Seattle, Maya overheard one of Ethan's business associates murmur, "Where'd you find her?" "Not your usual type," Ethan replied coolly. "She's my wife, and I don't care about anyone's type." Standing nearby, Maya felt warmth, knowing Ethan always defended her. Maya also made academic progress. She completed a research paper on inclusive education that her professor recommended for a conference. "You have a strong voice, Maya," he told her. The praise boosted her confidence, though she still struggled with balancing everything. One evening, as Ethan found her up late studying, he sat beside her and said, "You don't have to do it all alone. I can hire someone to help with Noah so you can focus." Maya shook her head, smiling. "I want to do it myself, but thank you for always being here." Zoe, meanwhile, had begun to thrive at school. She joined the art club and made more friends, especially Mia, who often came over. One day, Zoe brought home a painting of their family, 4 figures standing before a house, Noah in Maya's arms. "This is us," Zoe said, grinning brightly. Maya hung the painting on the wall, feeling their family become more and more solid. However, a small challenge surfaced when Maya received an email from Zoe's school. Zoe had been teased by a classmate for having an unusual family. When Maya spoke to Zoe, the girl admitted, "They said Dad's not my real dad." Maya hugged her gently, explaining, "Dad, Ethan loves you like his own. Families don't have to look like everyone else's. What matters is love." Zoe nodded, though Maya knew she would need time to understand fully. That night, Maya and Ethan lay in bed talking about Zoe. "She's growing up so fast," Ethan said, voice low. "I'm afraid she'll ask about how we began." Maya took his hand. "We'll be honest, just like today. Zoe's strong enough to know." Ethan kissed her hand. "Thank you for making me a father." Maya stared at the ceiling, thinking about their journey. The past was still a shadow, but the love within their family was bright enough to outshine it. Maya stood in the living room of their Seattle home, gently cradling baby Ava, their 3-month-old daughter born this past spring. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the family portrait Zoe had drawn last year, now updated to include Ava and their newly adopted golden retriever Buster. Zoe, now 15, sat on the couch, helping 4-year-old Noah color in a dinosaur. Ethan walked in carrying the smell of fresh coffee and his usual warm smile. "Who wants pancakes this morning?" he asked. "Me? I want chocolate chips," Noah shouted excitedly. Maya laughed, handed Ava to Ethan, and stepped into the kitchen, her heart full of quiet joy. 6 years had passed since Maya signed that contract with Ethan to save Zoe's life. Now their family had overcome illness and built a life full of love. Zoe, once a little girl battling cancer, was now a smart, thoughtful teen who dreamed of becoming a pediatrician to help kids like she once was. Endlessly energetic Noah was the family's joy, and Ava, with bright eyes like Zoe's, was living proof of Maya and Ethan's enduring love. But the journey hadn't been easy. A year earlier, Maya had received a call from Zoe's former doctor, reminding them of a missed routine checkup due to their move. The fear of cancer returning gripped Maya and Ethan for an entire day. But the results came back clear. "I told you I'm super healthy," Zoe declared, hugging her mother to reassure her. That moment reminded Maya that the past could still haunt them, but their family was strong enough to face it. Now, a certified educational counselor, Maya had graduated 2 years ago. She worked at a nonprofit, supporting underprivileged children's access to education, her long-held dream. The work gave her great pride, but also came with its stresses. Once she received an email from a former colleague in Chicago, hinting she was lucky to have married Ethan. Maya deleted the message and reminded herself that others' opinions didn't define her worth. Sensing her tension, Ethan arranged a quiet dinner at a small restaurant for just the two of them. He said, "You're the strongest woman I know," holding her hand. Maya smiled, feeling deeply seen and valued. Ethan had grown in his role as both husband and father. Though still managing Carter Enterprises' regional office, he had learned to make time for family, from driving Zoe to art class to teaching Noah how to ride a bike. He had once feared Zoe would question how he and Maya met, but his heart was at ease after Maya's honest conversation with Zoe the year before. "She understands more than I expected," he told Maya one night as they lay in bed. Maya nodded. "She's our daughter. She's strong like both of us." Zoe continued to shine. She topped her science class and participated in a research project on childhood cancer, earning a school award. But she also faced judgment. One day a classmate asked, "He's not your real dad, is he? Why do you call him Dad?" Zoe answered calmly and firmly, "My dad is the one who loves and takes care of me. That's what matters." When Zoe shared the story, Maya hugged her tightly. "You did great, sweetheart," she said, beaming with pride. Their family wasn't perfect. There were days when Maya and Ethan disagreed about how to parent Noah, or when Zoe stormed off wanting more freedom. But they always came together, talked, and worked through it. One Christmas evening, gathered around the tree, Zoe read a letter she had written. "Thank you, Mom, Dad, Noah, and Ava, for being my family. Even when I was sick, I never felt unloved." Maya wiped away tears. Ethan hugged Zoe and Noah jumped in shouting, "I love you all too." Maya looked around the room, reflecting on the journey from the day she stood before Ethan with that cold contract. That decision, once painful, had led her here to a family that not only survived, but thrived. She once thought it had been a mistake. Now she saw it as the first right step toward the life she had never dared to imagine, a life that brought Ethan and Zoe together and made room for Noah and Ava. One morning, her daughter surprised her when Maya dropped Zoe off at school. "Mom, I want to do a project about our family, about how I beat cancer." "What do you think?" Maya stopped the car and looked at her. "I'm proud of you. But what do you want to share?" Zoe smiled. "That families don't have to look like everyone else's. They have to love each other. And that you're my superhero." Maya hugged her, knowing every hardship had been worth it. That night, Maya sat writing in her journal, a habit she'd kept since those dark early days. 6 years ago, I thought I had lost everything. Now I have a family, a career, and myself. Love didn't arrive as I imagined, but it's more real than I ever dreamed. She closed the notebook, glanced at Ethan sleeping beside her, and heard Noah and Zoe chatting down the hall. Ava breathed softly in her crib. Buster curled up at her feet. This was happiness, not perfect, but more than enough. And every day, she was grateful.